practice. Harney, developing psychological and neurobehavioral countermeasures for analog astronauts living in Austere, I.C.E.
Thank you. I.C.E. Hi, folks. Well, as you could see, that's exactly what happens. Technical issue and human interaction. Environmental related issues and human risk factors. So today we're going to be talking about the developing psychological and countermeasures for analog astronauts living in austere, isolated environments. My name is Dr. Harney, and I'm a psychiatrist. My specialty is in psychiatry, and I'm deepening my interest in the space medicine and synthetic biology. The situation that you saw right now involves a couple of psychological risk factors. And it's funny because before every presentation, something happens. When I was presenting at ISDC, I'll probably tell you the story if we have enough time. Something happened that involved a human interpersonal interaction that will likely happen between the crew members in space. So today, what we encountered already is technical issue, human reaction, decision making, because I was thinking whether I shall present you without those slides with pictures or shall we get this thing going. But anyhow, besides that, I'm an analog astronaut. So how many of you are analog astronauts here? One, two people. So I'll briefly will say what analog astronaut is. My journey started when I called Dr. Susan Jewell, the founder of the Mars Academy USA, and she learned about my background in medicine, and she said, would you like to join a low fidelity mission here in Vasquez Rocks, California? And I said, sure, I would love to become an analog astronaut, but I had no idea what it entitles because I've never been to one. In analog astronaut missions, you have pre-simulation, simulation where you are simulating you're living on Mars or other planetary surfaces, and the post-sim, the compression. So our pre-sim for our low-fidelity mission was training process, getting familiar with the protocols. The simulation was only 5 days. And I thought, that should be easy. I was hiking, I'm active, go fitness, that should be easy. So the first day when we arrived there, in desert, the temperature drops, right? It was so cold. So I started having my headache. And I started having doubts. Why am I here? Why am I here? Why am I doing this? 5 days mission. Then, of course, I recovered, remembering about all the cool researches that we're going to be doing. But even one day gave me this psychological problem where I started having my doubts. Now imagine 3 years on the journey to Mars. So, yes, so why is it important? That day didn't leave a particular doubt in my head why psychological problems are important, is because we're all human beings. Technical issues, we react, or no technical issues, we react. The biggest risk factor for the space exploration till nowadays. So this one doesn't look too scared, but if the astronaut is scared, he might just decide to jump out of the spacecraft and kill himself and the crew. Actually, that issue was described in 1959 issue of the American Journal of Psychiatry. Separation anxiety, the temptation to escape through suicide into oblivion may be accompanied by an urge to destroy the space vehicle and the rest of the crew. 2 years before Yuri Gagarin went into space. Even though his mission lasted only 108 minutes, today, 60 years after, we're talking about 3 years journey, and even more if we think about the technical issues. Selection process criteria. So my position in the crew was astropsychiatrist, and I joined 3 missions fully, and I joined 2 missions as a part of the remote medical team. So my duties as an astropsychiatrist were to do a lot of evaluations, pre-sim, in-sim, and post-sim, and that included a bunch of interviews, that included the evaluation for any particular disqualification matters and mental disorders, and qualification for the job of the crew members. So the selection process is vigorous. It includes all of that and beyond. Ability to perform under stressful conditions is very important. A lot of those are based on teamwork, and leadership skills are very important. I was commander in one of the missions. In our missions, our selection criteria are based on the physical suitability, mental health. We also evaluate personality, and we do believe that multidisciplinary knowledge of the crew is very important, because if it's 5 of us, if it's 6 of us, we have only one physician on board, physician is dead, which actually another problem psychologically, what if one person dies? But we'll discuss that.
The expert's dead.
That's right. And those are big challenges, because as we're talking about the long duration space flight, that imposes additional challenges, because we cannot predict that long in the future. It's very challenging. Also, the commercial sector of the space flight is growing. So what are those problems that we encounter the most? Depression, anxiety, fatigue. This is where we're going to be focusing today. Depression is about 6-7% of population. Anxiety is even more common, 30% of population. And those are indeed the most common in flight and post-flight. Of course, each of those problems can influence cognition, emotion, perception, behavior, performance of the astronaut. Why is it important? It's important on an everyday basis, because the schedule is very, very strict, but also it is important because of the human error. Let's just imagine for a second, it's not the subject of my talk today, but let's imagine a medical emergency. What if astronauts already experiencing anxiety, already have interpersonal problems? The emergency medicine is a separate subject that imposes a great challenge when astronauts experiencing all of that. So the factors that are contributing to those problems are, I broke them down in 4. Those are physical, environmental related issues, habitability, interpersonal conflicts, and psychological. And the first 3 contribute to the latter. So physiological effects, we're not going to spend too much time here, because that's not the subject of our talk. But again, it's environment, vacuum, temperature, radiation, weightlessness, disruption of senses, and lack of sleep. Lack of sleep is, of interest to us, because that's a big problem. And when we analyze the journals of the astronauts, this is one of the main things that they mention in sleeping, lack of sleep. Disruption of senses, taste probably will be related most to our talk today. It's inconclusive, but majority of researchers conclude that it's related to psychology, to the boredom and monotony. Habitability, that's a big one. Well, isolation and confinement. Even 5 days living in a room with 5 people you don't know, who speak different language, who have different cultural background is challenging. Lack of sensory stimulation, high workload. We have a very tight schedule where you have to perform all this research, collect the data, and still maintain the balance between work and rest. Lack of privacy was challenging for me, because we had compartments where we had our kitchen, our engineering room, our sleeping compartment, and our compartments were separated in 4 sections, 2 per person. So I had to share it with the person who was experiencing some digestive problems. So that was challenging, and it's also lack of privacy. So potentially life-threatening emergencies, technical and medical likewise. Oh, I forgot to say, 15 cubic meters. I couldn't find the 25 cubic meters, but that's what NASA reports to be a space for the astronauts who travel into Mars, versus the ISS, which is about 100 cubic meters, plus minus. Don't judge me on that. So I could find a picture of 15 cubic meters. So it's a little bit bigger space, but as you can see, it's small. Interpersonal conflicts is self-explanatory. Psychological. Where am I? The psychological problems are the biggest ones. So stress, we discussed the high workload, habitability issues, interpersonal, all of them contributing to depression, anxiety, fatigue, and of course it will influence the perception, it will influence the tasks that are related to memory, to attention, performance overall. Depression. What is depression? Lack of appetite, sleeping problems. There are a bunch of criteria that anyone can look up at DSM-5. The main factor that all of those criteria should persist for at least 2 weeks to be diagnosed with depression. Anxiety, it's overreaction, something that's disproportionate to the situation, and it should influence the functionality, your day-to-day functionality. Fatigue can be within other diseases, but can be diagnosed separately as well. This one is the most boring slide, and my presentation doesn't have a picture, but it summarizes all the researches and psychiatric and psychological issues reported in the space missions, and I took that from various researchers from ISS, from Mir, Russia, and from European community. So most common, as we discussed, anxiety, depression, psychosomatic reactions are common. Sometimes we discuss the sensory issues when people see flashes. But also another astronaut I was reading, he was experiencing a tooth pain, and then he started documenting it, and he got so obsessed with his tooth pain, so he thought that it's incurable infection that's happening there, and it wasn't there. So, problem related to major mood and thought disorders, bipolar, schizophrenia, were not reported, but I do believe that is due to, we're not talking about the long duration space flight. We're still talking about relatively short duration of 6 months, and we're talking about the people who are very well selected. That being said, on the simulated missions to Antarctic bases and submarines, there were 5% of people who reported those breakdowns. Displacement of crew attention to the mission control were reported when they were comparing the group dynamic. Also, the crew was happy when they were given a little bit more autonomy. That being said, the control mission was not really happy about that. They were having anxiety about it. Of course, it's good when the crew commander has a very strong leadership skills, and this is like the goal of my future researchers. I would like to see on and research different leadership skills, because I've been to 3 missions, low fidelity, low duration, but all 3 times the leader had a different skills and different style. One of those I was the commander. And those are the most common problems that astronauts reporting. You can read here: workload, disbalance between work and leisure, sleep and food, and there were some positive things that have been reported. The people who've been just based their reporting that it gave them a different perspective and appreciation of Earth when they came back. All right, so current countermeasures to astronaut psychological problems are basically based on those researches that we just discussed. Anxiety, depression, fatigue, and what currently is implemented are things that are based on astronaut connecting to home. It's a live chat with relatives, it's a live chat with doctors, with control team. Unfortunately, as we all know, it won't be possible because it's a long flight, Earth out of sight, 40 minutes delays both ways. So the live chat won't be possible. So even though the current countermeasures include crew interactivity, training, discussion sessions, balance between work and leisure, private contact with family and friends are very, very important right now. But how it's going to change, we're going to take a look in a second. I think there is a shifting paradigm between countermeasures, how they were implemented earlier and right now, because we have more technology. As we encountered approximately 20 minutes ago, technology is not perfect. We couldn't even transfer PC file into the Mac file, or vice versa. So we're gaining access to those wonderful technologies, progressive technologies like 3D printing, biotechnology, synthetic biology, VR, virtual reality, augmented reality. How much of it we can implement successfully, it's like in life. You plan for one thing and then something happens and you have to reroute. I think it's possible, and we're implementing a lot of them already today, and I want to share with you some of them. Body mapping by astronauts, Bernie Marslow VR project, and some other projects that we implemented within the Austere wellness program at Mars Academy USA. So, body mapping, art therapy project. So this one is without technology. Basically, the whole idea of the therapy here entitles that we draw around the astronaut's body, like pictured on the top of this picture, and then the astronaut who is lying down gonna color his avatar with various colors. What it gives us is we see a snapshot of the astronaut state of body and mind at this particular time. But if we collect those pictures over time, we could trace the pattern and have a deeper look into astronauts' well-being. So this one is with the technology, body mapping using 360-degree VR Google Tilt Brush. The same thing. The person just uses the VR technology to draw his avatar, and then he colors the avatar, and we receive the same results. Basically, the snapshot of his present well-being, and then we can collect those pictures to trace on the longer run. Why is it important? Well-being is one. It's a fun activity as well, so it's a good balance between leisure and work. And also, it can serve as a prediction of potential risks. So, for example, one of our crew members, he drew his avatar, and he colored it all red. And then we found out that the astronaut was experiencing fever, and he didn't report it to the crew and safety officer, but we could discover that because of the body mapping. All right, the next one is the Bernie Marslow VR project. It was created by one of the alumni of Mars Academy USA. And basically, this is a conflict resolution simulation training for crews in isolated and confined environments. What it entitles is you basically wear the VR goggles and you discover various scenarios. It might be a conflict scenario between the commander, like I experienced between commander and one of the crew members, and through the questionnaires and the scenario, you could learn better ways to resolve those issues. This technology particularly, I think, has a great importance not only in training astronauts, but also in mitigating the interpersonal conflicts within the crew. It could be applied in telemedicine as well as a training tool. Other projects that we did, the Austere Wellness Program, Green Hub, researchers from Florida Institute, Florida University, they discovered that has a positive psychological effect if there is a gardening on the board of the spacecraft. But even the presence of the plants will give you this positive psychological effect. The Alchemnaut project. What is Alchemnaut? Anyone has a guess? Not you. Yes, Bill.
Has to do with alchemy.
That's right. Alchemnaut is the combination of two words. Astronaut. I was waiting for this moment to show you my shirt. And the alchemist. So alchemy is the old tradition that's been practiced since Mesopotamia and even before. And what it entitles is the transformation, the metals into gold. But it's also an personal transformation that the person encounters in alchemy. So Alchemnaut is exactly that. What we were doing is we were going onto EVA, extravehicular activity that you do outside of the spacecraft. And the astronauts were given a task to pick up or see an object that resonated with them the most. And the results were very interesting because I want to actually read you a couple of passages from the astronauts. One says, "I just picked it up and I felt deep connection. Maybe this rock was from asteroid that impacted the Earth. This rock connects us to the past and yet connects us to the future, as one day we can pass asteroid belts." Just one of the examples. Another one says, I picked it up, the rock. It was also the rock. It was stuck. You don't have much choice in Damascus rocks. There's a lot of rocks. I picked it up, and it was stuck to another piece of rock. And when I picked it up completely, it almost had a shape of heart. And later, this astronaut. Later, we videotaped those experiences of the astronaut wishes, and later this astronaut who shared with us about this rock reflected on the conflict with another astronaut, and they were able to actually resolve this conflict through the discussion within the crew, and the conflict was mitigated. There were no tension between them because they understood that the main goal is the success of the mission, and it was something minor, but they were able to resolve it very quickly. The crew members will need to be open to discussing psychological stresses with each other, says Nick Canis from University of California. Yes, it did. Indeed, I do believe it's very important. Music, meditation, photography, video, everything was reported, especially photography, was reported to be a relaxation technique for a lot of astronauts. Physical activity, but I want to say a few words about crew painting and art. It kind of says what it is, but anyone knows this drawing of Da Vinci, 1500s? Yeah. Yes. So this is Da Vinci painting on the left. Basically, in 1500s, he realized that sunlight reflected from Earth lit up the lunar night. 1500s. This is an art, this is the painting, but yet it is a great scientific discovery that he did at that time through his imagination, through his thought, through his brains.
Earthshine.
That's right, that's right. And this one is a painting that we did in our mission 1117. It was a fun exercise. I encourage you to do it at home. It's kind of fun. You have five people with closed eyes, and the first person who's standing in front of a canvas is painting. So the last person who is in a chain of these people gonna draw a shape or whatever is the task of this exercise or intention of this exercise. And then this shape will be passed along the chain until it hits the first person who's gonna draw it on a canvas. So, well, this yellow thing, I was painting it the last in the chain, and it was a sun. Well, it didn't come out exactly like a sun, but I still like it. I still think it's a piece of art, and I put it on my wall in the house, and I enjoy looking at it. James Webb, the importance of the art. He was the administrator in NASA. You can read his quote, but he realized the importance of art and started implementing the art program. Indeed, art helps to document the events, but it also gives us a glimpse at the experience of the astronaut himself. Alan Bean, astronaut, he stepped on the moon. He had his own painting space on Earth, 240,000 kilometers away, when he first did that, and then he painted this. He said if I would be just documenting, I would use all the gray colors, but I'm an artist, and I add some colors. He adds some beautiful yellow, beautiful purple to his paintings. He saw a great importance in the art for the humanity and for the astronauts. So as we discussed briefly, you see a slight change in how we do the countermeasures to psychological problems. When it was connected to astronaut feeling closer to home, right now we're implementing more and more technologies, VR technology, synthetic biology, growing plants in space, food, right? We need all of that. And sure thing, VR and other technologies can be a great step for us for countermeasures because it deals with psychological problems. It deals with interpersonal problems. It can solve some problems in habitability. You can go for a walk in the beautiful mountains on the earth using VR technology. Sure thing, you can do all of that. But there's still a lot of things, and I wanted to include this slide because I think those impose a great questions still. Low duration space flight, hard to predict. Physiological effects including, not to say anything about the psychological as well. Commercial sector is growing. I don't know how we're gonna send 100 people in space to Mars. I really don't know. If you want to talk about it more, email me. Medical facilities on board should be adequately respond to any trauma and emergency and cope with adaptive responses. I don't think we're still there yet. And of course, the further exploration in terms of the psychology and other issues like ethics and technicalities need to be performed in areas of gerontology, sexuality, and of course, if God forbid someone dies in space. I love Nikola Tesla. So he said, I start work here. I work from my brain until I have every single detail of what I want to create. And when I see the functionality in my brain, I create it. And that's how he filed over 1,000 patents. And I just admire his work very much. And his thought confirms the new discoveries in the neuroplasticity and researchers talking about the brain. Thought, emotion, and action trigger neural activity, which can lead to reorganization of the brain, shaping future psychological experience, which will lead us to where we become active agents in the construction of our own neurobiology and, of course, our lives. All right. So even, what I wanted to say in conclusion, that no matter what tools we use, Mac, PC, or VR technologies or other technologies, those are still, as the countermeasures of psychological issues, those are just the tools. We need to look deeper in the person who will implement those tools, because in the end of the day, in the uncertain journey to Mars, it will be only two things: humanity and imagination. Thank you so much. 30 seconds, okay? I wanted to present this. So yeah, there was another funny story, but probably I'm going to skip that one. She got me in trouble when I was presenting in Washington. She's the founder of, Dr. Susan Jewell is the founder of Mars Academy USA. And I just want to give her this t-shirt today because I love her very much and she gets me in trouble. So, when on Mars, do as no Martians do. This is the first and unique t-shirt for you. Oh,